Okay, Chag Sameach. It is the seventh day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And we'll just get into the newsletter right away. I don't want to waste too much time because I think we have an early morning tomorrow. We're going to start at 9 a.m. doing a Zoom meeting. I think that's at 9 a.m. if I'm not mistaken. So, pandemic, the first of three curses in the fourth sabbatical cycle. This is dated March the 12th, so it's 4 days old now. Normally I like to be on time with these, but it's been a busy few days. This is the third newsletter for the new year, 5856. Okay, so barley update. Shalom to the royal family of Jehovah. I've received a private email from Becca about the state of the barley, but as I go to post, I have not been sent any pictures. We have all read from others how this field Becca had found Aviv barley in was being eaten by the sheep and trampled down. Those same reports then went on to malign and discredit Becca and her reports. I do not agree with those who have to justify themselves by tearing down others. All I want are the facts, just the facts. So today Becca told me she had found some barley that the sheep did not eat and the heads were ready to shatter and going to self-seed. I trust Becca's observations and I applaud her dedication to serve all of us with these reports. Although each year I am never 100% sure until Wave Sheaf Day if we have kept the Passover at the proper time. With this report from Becca, I am now 100% confident that we are following the cloud at the proper time. You are free to make up your own mind and do what your heart leads you to do. And me too, I'm also 100% on board that we are going by what Scripture has said, by what Yah is commanded to observe. In the mail. Today, as I go to finally post this newsletter, I received this email from my friend Stephen Spikerman. He came and met me at our Sukkot festival in Jerusalem in 2009 and again in 2010. It was Stephen who wrote me and told me I had to put those things I was writing in the newsletter into a book. He absolutely insisted I do it without delay. This prodding from him resulted in the prophecies of Abraham being published in 2010. This is the letter. Dear Joseph, beloved brother in Messiah Yeshua, greetings from the Principality of Wales. I trust you are faring well and are high spirits in this glorious high holy day season of unleavened bread. I am forwarding a message from Todd Bennett of www.shemaisrael.net titled Purim, A New Perspective on an Ancient Story. And if you click on this title, you come to his video on the subject, Understanding the Manifold Pressures Upon Your Valuable Time. You only need to look at the bit just before the center of the tape, where he says that Haman chose the date, the 13th of Adar, by lot, which, as he puts it, fell hours before Passover, a time when the Jewish people should be in Jerusalem keeping Passover. For me, this was a revelation of double significance, as I marveled at the fact that Passover this year coincided with Purim. When Virginia told our son Julian that we are observing Passover, his response was, "But it's Purim, Mom." Since then, another believer questioned why I was observing Passover on the same date as Purim. I had to explain to him that whereas Passover was a commanded assembly, as per Leviticus 23 in the Torah, whilst Purim was merely a Jewish festival based upon Jewish tradition. Most people who know us think we are crazy in keeping Passover now. Yet nothing will shake us, as we are utterly convicted we got it right, as we did last year, thanks to your inspired ministry. To me, It is absolutely typical for the enemy to choose the 13th of Adar, e.g., the date of Passover that year. I have to say i.e., it's more like i.e., to kill all the Jews in the Persian Empire. I would like to apologize to you for having argued with you in the past over the issue of celebrating Purim and Hanukkah. Truth to tell you, you were right, and I was wrong. I also repent over the fact that I too was one of those who reproached you in those early years about your marital relationship, in so much that I did not support you at the time you were under vehement attack about the issue. I am ashamed of myself, as I behaved like a coward, and hence I beg your forgiveness for that too. To make restitution, I pray for your wife and children with great fervor, asking our Father to turn their hearts around. My prayers are that you may come to know and enjoy the warmth, love, and comfort of a true marriage as Jehovah intended. I am praying for a miracle that will bless you out of your socks. With much love in Messiah Yeshua, Stephen J. Spikerman, Ephraim's Watchman. I was also sent to the following. I was also sent the following by Simon Warner for all of us to consider. And this is just outbreak precautions, outbreak cleaning schedule. It says daily open windows for at least 15 minutes and ventilate your living area and the kitchen. It's a good idea to get fresh air in. Just make sure you're not in make sure you're not in China or Iran or Italy if you're doing that. You want to just do that in places where it's not reached the peak, the viral peak. Refrigerator door. Okay, these are just many tips here on what to wipe down in the kitchen. You just want to sanitize things, wipe them down, use Clorox and all that. Bathroom, sink area, and counters. It's pretty much common sense. Just making sure everything's clean and you wipe down all items that people frequently pick up and touch. Twice a week, you want to mop all hard floors, vacuum. So it's a lot of de-leavening, a lot of cleansing, a lot of sanitation. You just want to make sure your house is a green zone, like everything is safe there. You want to make sure that you don't let people in your house that don't live with you, things like that. Notes: best practices during an outbreak. Shoes off at the door. Personally, I take my shoes off outside. I leave my boots in the garage or whatever you're wearing. Leave backpacks, bags at the door. That's a good tip too. Wash all produce thoroughly before eating. Avoid open food service, so don't go to restaurants and groceries. Daily bathing for everyone. I only bathe if I go out, but if I'm staying in the house, I don't bathe as often. Sanitize high traffic areas for family in family vehicle. Okay, so yeah, it's if you're using your vehicle. Wash your hands, scrub your hands for 1 minute before preparing food. If you touch your face, you must re-scrub. Okay, I've been touching my face, but I wash my hands before. If caring for small children, wash your hands before and after diaper changes, especially after. Laundry soiled with bodily fluids must be washed separately from standard loads. Yeah, that's a Torah principle, I would think. All body fluids like blood and etc. Wash dishes immediately after eating a meal. I also want to put in my own tip that don't share dishes. Have your own designated dish. So I have my own bowl, I have my own utensils, and no one else uses them in my house besides me. And I think I should go for every member of the household just in case someone's infected. Yeah, no sharing of food and drinks, no eating off other people's plates. Small children must not be allowed to touch open food. When eating as a family, one person is charged with serving food. No second helpings. Wow. with the same plate. Interesting. That's a new one. If refilling glasses, do not touch the drink carafe pitcher to the glass directly. Yeah, these are very precautious. All dishes that can be washed on the high temperature dishwasher setting should be. Have a great day. Um, avoid touching door handles. Don't pick your nose. Don't pick your ears either. Be kind, gracious, and patient. And there's a psalm, Psalm 91. You can read that on your own time. Welcome home. Psalm 121 is also there. And all the tips he was saying. Wash your hands and count the ABCs as you're scrubbing your hands. You're lathering your hands. Disinfect your phones. Yeah, I would definitely not have my phone in a common area. I just keep in my room. Okay, next heading says, my fears coming true. Last week, I wrote you my reasons for not going to Israel and Kenya, and then on the Saudi tour I had been planning to do since October. This past week, I was sent the following articles. So I'm just going to read the title. It says 15 Americans quarantined in Bethlehem as Israel and Palestine struggle to stop the coronavirus spread. That's from March the 7th, 2020. Next article reads, Coronavirus on the Nile as river cruiser quarantined with 150 tourists on board. That's from March 7th, 2020. So really, we can't keep up with all these news items. There's no time to read every single breaking news regarding the virus. At this point, we're just going to have to focus on articles where people actually die, or if there's like some major event like a shutdown, a lockdown of a country, or closing all travel, things like that, or just permanent lockdown, quarantining everybody. Major announcements would have to be covered, but things like that, there's really no time to read everything. There's not enough lifetimes to go through all the information. I also have an email from a lady who wanted to go on the tour with us, but canceled, writing to say she's looking for a place to stay, as she was now under quarantine in Israel due to the virus. This past Wednesday, President Trump shut down all air travel between the US and Europe. This was immediately after the WHO declared the coronavirus a pandemic. This Wednesday, in case some of you did not know, was in fact Passover. Abib 15. I just put Abib. It says Nisan, but I prefer Abib. Nisan is Nisan is the Babylonian name, so I don't like to use that name. I'll say the first month or Abib or Aviv. Also at this time, the NBA shut down all future games for this reason. Then the NHL did the same, and all the rest of the sports following suit. When I went back to work on Thursday, the guys at work were all over me. They're asking me what was going on and saying just how bad this was. The same guys who just last week were poking fun at the future pandemic. The roughest and toughest of the bunch came up to me and in all sincerity said it was because we as a people were sinning. But he did not consider what he was doing as sin. Everyone else is sinning, but not me. I had been trying to get this newsletter out to you for over a month. Yes, I have been trying to send it out for about half amount of time. Sorry, for about that amount of time. But then Passover came 30 days sooner than I had ever expected, and I have been in a rush ever since trying to get ready and catch up. I hope this is a blessing to you all. The next heading reads, Leaven and the Seventh Millennium. We are now in the days of unleavened bread, in the feast of unleavened bread. Tuesday will be the seventh day of unleavened bread, and that is right now. It is the seventh day, so holy day. The Passover. Okay, there's Leviticus 23, verses 48, and that's just Passover. We have explained to you in other teachings how the 7 days of unleavened bread represent each of the 7 millennium, and how during those 7 millennium we are to be putting sin out of our lives. In the same way, we are to put leaven out of our homes during these 7 days. Exodus 12, verses 15 to 20. 15 to 20, okay. And then Deuteronomy 16, 2 to 4. Deuteronomy 16, 2 to 4. What does the leaven represent? What was Jehovah teaching us that we still do not get today? Okay, 1 Corinthians 5. I'm going to read this one. 1 Corinthians 5, verses 6 to 8. So what are we not getting? I think this newsletter will take at least an hour, because I went through it, just scanned through, and it looks like it's going to take at least an hour. So I'll try to be thorough, but not rush it. Okay. Verse 6. Don't you know that even a little leaven leavens all the dough? Get rid entirely of the old leaven, so that you may be like new dough, free from leaven, as in truth you are. For our Passover lamb is already sacrificed, Mashiach himself. Therefore, let us keep our festival, not with the leaven of former days, nor the leaven of vice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Yeah, it reads so much differently in that translation. During these 7 days of unleavened bread, we are to put out of our lives the evil that is against the Torah. We do this using leaven each year as an example of the greater struggle we are to be putting out of our lives always, and that is sin that is against the Torah. That includes adding to the Torah things that are not in it, as Yehoshua pointed out to the disciples. And he references Matthew 16, 5 to 12, talking about the leaven, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, which is the doctrine, their traditions, their hypocrisy. In the Garden of Eden, Jehovah walked with Adam and Eve. This is representative of the first holy day of unleavened bread, or the first millennium. Okay, it's getting a little bit cold behind me, so I'm going to just put this hood on so I don't get sick. Genesis 3, verses 8 and 9. Okay, this was the day that sealed the fate of Jehovah, who would give his own life for our debt of sin. The lamb that was slain on the 14th of Aviv and eaten at the beginning of the 15th, the day the death angel passed over Israel, killing the firstborn of Egypt to begin the Exodus. Revelation 13, verse 8. The 7th day of unleavened bread is represented by the time when Israel crossed the Red Sea and the entire army of Egypt, over 600,000 men, were destroyed, and Israel delivered from them. The army of Egypt represents Satan. We have a similar event told to us in Revelation. That's in Revelation 12, 13 to 17, talking about the dragon casting a flood after the woman in the wilderness. This takes place at the end of the 6th millennial day, and not the 7th, because Satan is locked away during the 7th millennium. It is during the 7th millennium that King David will rule over us, and the final removal of leaven from our lives and from the world will take place. Hosea 3, verses 4 and 5. I'm going to read this just because it is quite, it's a scripture that a lot of us glance over and a lot of people don't consider. There's Hosea in this one. 1070. Okay. Yeah, one thing that people don't seem to recognize is that even in the faith is that King David is going to be ruling in the future. As much as Yehoshua is going to be ruling, King David is also going to rule at a certain point. So 4 and 5, 3 and 4. Okay. 3, chapter 3 and verse 4. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an altar, and without a priesthood, and without manifestations, or also translated as Urim and Thummim. So that's verse 4. Verse 5, and afterward shall the children of Israel return, and shall seek Jehovah their Elohim, and David their king, and shall be amazed at Jehovah and at his goodness in the latter days. So, wow, actually it reads a lot differently than the Masoretic here. After the sons of shall return and seek Jehovah. Okay. They shall be amazed at Jehovah. Okay, actually, it's pretty similar. The next verse, it says here, the valley of dry bones, Ezekiel 37, verses 1 to 28. And I'm just going to read the one verse that is highlighted in red for the sake of time. I'd like to finish this before midnight. Wake up in time for the Zoom meeting. So Ezekiel 37:24, also referring to David. Okay. Verse 24. And my servant David shall be a prince in the midst of them. There shall be one shepherd of them all, for they shall walk in mine ordinances, and keep my judgments, and do them. I'm going to read the next verse. And they shall dwell in their land, which I have given to my servant Yaakov, where their fathers dwelt, and they shall dwell upon it. And David my servant shall be their prince forever. Wow. That's huge. That is big. So King David is going to be ruling, not just for a short time, but forever. I wonder how that's going to work with him and Yeshua, because he's the son of David, but he's also the creator of David. So anyway, I guess we'll see. We'll see. Time will tell. That's not for me to know right now. The anointed one, King David, who was anointed by Samuel as a boy, and then by Judah when they made him king, the tribe of Judah, and then again by all of Israel 7 years later, when all 12 tribes were united under his kingship. King David is the anointed one, the Mashiach that is going to rule over us during the 7th millennium. The restoration of Israel. Amos 9, verses 11 and 12. And I will read that too. It's also about David, and he just happens to be one of my favorite people in all of history. Not just scripture, but in history. Okay, Amos. This Bible, the Septuagint, It's not in the normal order I'm used to, the Masoretic order, so that's why I have to keep looking at the page number 1084. Otherwise, I'd be here for 10 minutes looking for it. 1084, and that's Amos 9, verses 11 and 12. Okay. Verse 11, in that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and will rebuild the ruins of it, and will set up the parts thereof that have been broken down, and will build it up as in the ancient days. Verse 12, that the remnant of men and all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called may earnestly seek me, says Jehovah, who does all these things. Wow. Okay, what did it say in verse 12? Mine says all the Gentiles, but here it says Edom. Okay, so there's a discrepancy there. The Masoretic says Edom, or Esau, whereas the Septuagint just says just the Gentiles, all unbelievers, instead of Edom. It's just saying everyone. What does this take place? When does this take place? When is David going to be made king over us? And there's a scripture from Jeremiah 30, verse 3. When is that captivity going to take place? We have been warning you since 2005 that this captivity was to take place starting in the year 2020, which we have now just begun. The captivity begins this year, the 2300 days of hell, when Israel, all 12 tribes, will be hunted and slaughtered by the millions. This is about to begin, and still many laugh at our warnings. It is from this captivity that the remnant will be brought back, out from, and returned to the land of Israel. Some call this the second Exodus. Oh boy, I have a lot to comment about that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. As we can see right now, America, UK, pretty much the whole world is being weakened by this virus, but the signs are pointing to America being significantly weakened. Canada is probably one of the worst. We have taken this so lightly and been very lax. People are not taking it seriously, especially in Canada, especially in England, the UK. In America, I'd say it's the same kind of thing, but they're able to be more strict in enforcing borders and with FEMA, whereas the Canadian government is a little trigger shy. We're too unsure, we're too tentative to do anything because we don't want to offend anybody. So yeah, I see all signs pointing to that going in that direction. So time will tell as to how that will unfold. The Lord will restore Israel. Jeremiah 16, verses 14 to 18. And Jeremiah 38 and 9. So it's talking about how we will be hunted, how Israel will be hunted. Right now, as you practice putting sin out of your lives, by removing the leaven from your homes, you are acknowledging the day soon. You're acknowledging the day is soon when King David will rule and set up the kingdom during the 7th millennium, where sin will not be tolerated and will be put down in righteousness. Those days are directly in front of us. Pray you and your children can serve in this kingdom for the next millennium. It was during the first millennium that Jehovah said, in Genesis 6, verse 3. I'm just going to read it from there. And Jehovah said, My spirit shall not always strive with man. In his erring he is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 shana. I put that there. Shana. The word years is shana in Hebrew and means cycles of time. 120 Jubilee cycles later brings you to today. Our time is now. Once the seventh millennium begins under King David, then Jehovah will not be striving with man, but will be working with them and blessing them, as he has promised he would do if and when we ever decided to obey. That is when we get the leaven out of our lives. New subtitle or heading: The Plagues of the Second Exodus. I have been trying to get this article out now for about a month or more. The world events keep changing and are hard to keep on top of. Then Jehovah took 30 days away from us and moved Passover ahead, which meant the time I had planned to teach about Passover was rushed, and I lost 4 weeks off my schedule. Becca said in her reports, that it seemed like Jehovah was rushing spring along. Things were happening very fast. And we have said it now. We have said it now seems like Jehovah is rushing things along because judgment upon Israel has been declared. Typo there. Anyway. Judgment upon Israel has been declared. And is about to be swiftly executed. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 11 to it's just Ecclesiastes 8:11. Job 21, verses 11 to 15, and Isaiah 5, verses 18 and 19. Okay. Since 2005, I've been telling people about the 5 curses of Leviticus 26. The curses that come in accordance to the sabbatical cycles, which we are told about in Leviticus 25. But the world laughed and made fun of me as a nut job. Even those that are called brethren laughed and mocked us. Christians especially made fun of the things we said and stated that these laws were done away. Where's the proof? Really, show me proof where it's been done away, right? There is no proof. Isn't that what Jehovah says? It's a statute and a law forever. How long? Forever. Okay, moving on. Brethren said that they should keep the Sabbath and holy days, but the sabbatical years were just for the land of Israel and the Jews only. People forget the commission given to Israel. They were to teach the whole world the Torah. If they were not to do that, let me redo that. If they were not to do that, then why does John claim the whole world had sinned? John 1:29. Yoshua 2. Actually, I'm going to read some of these. Basically, that one's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to see how it reads in mine. John 1:29. The next day, John saw Yochanan saw Yehoshua coming towards him and exclaimed, "Here is the Lamb of Elohim who is to take away the sin of the world." The Great Commission, Matthew 28, verses 16 to 20. All right. And today we are witnessing the whole world suffer one plague after another. We barely got time to show you each plague. Okay, I'm a grammar Nazi, so I'm just going to rephrase that. We barely have time to show you each plague before the next one is upon us. This sure does sound like the events leading up to the Exodus. Yeah, it does. We had the Mississippi River flood last year, and the standing water in many of the fields prevented the breadbasket of the world from planting a crop. California was plagued by wildfires of biblical proportions. Actually, I need to add something. This isn't an article. I'm going to add something. There were also reports of let me just make sure it's true. Okay, this was a few years ago. 2016, there were many rivers and bodies of water all over the world. Places like Indonesia, Russia, and parts of Africa. I forgot where in Africa at the moment, but their waters were turning to blood. So that's very Exodus-like. In preparing this article, I asked Pauline for a list of each world disaster that has occurred. She sent me the following, which is an excellent way to help keep a record of these world events, and then to look back upon them to see if you see a pattern develop. Each of you could do the same to keep a record. You can download these charts from sightedmoon.com. And there's a chart here. It just says Gregorian date, what week, what month, what day, what feast. So there's scriptures in the side, and then you could just fill in the events that are taking place. And then you have examples like shootings and floodings and wars. In November and December of 2019 and January until March of 2020, we had the following headline news stories. We had the USA assassinate the Iranian general, Soleimani. Then Iran attacked 2 US bases in Iraq, and the world held its breath and prayed no Americans would be killed to justify an American invasion of Iran. And a lot of people were talking about World War III. They were saying, World War III! While we held our breath, Iran shut down a passenger airplane, killing 176 on board. You know what? That was a mercy because they don't have to live through the days ahead, as tragic as that was. As Australia was entering their summer, wildfires erupted, which was the earliest they had them. This then developed in whole cities evacuating, and people running for their lives into the ocean for safety from the wildfires which raced across the land. This was then followed by flooding rains, and softball-sized hail destroying hundreds of cars. Puerto Rico, which was still trying to recover from the devastating hurricane which flattened the island in 2018, now suffered an earthquake, destroying the buildings that had survived the hurricane. There were a number of earthquakes and volcano eruptions around the world, including Mount Taal in the Philippines, which threw a huge shadow over Manila. I want to just chime in and say we also had an incident at in Canada. A nuclear power plant was leaking, and they said it was a false alarm. So I'm not sure what to make of that, but that was that woke up a lot of people very early in the morning on the weekend. I think it was a weekend, and or was it a weekday? But the point is that that happened only, I think, like a month before all this stuff is before the coronavirus and all that. Before that happened in January, the coronavirus, but all the stuff with the volcano and the nuclear power plant that happened, I think, just exactly a month before. So the way I see that was at the time that happened, my phone just went off, like those really loud that emergency broadcast sound. Let me just look for that emergency broadcast system. Yeah, it played like this. No, that's not it. This one.
She would do anything.
Just skip this ad. I just really want to play the sound. It's quite. No, that's not it either. That's not it either. That's the one.
It's an alarming sound, isn't it?
Listen to it one more time.
Ontario Amber Alert. Event type is Amber Alert.
So that's what I woke up to that morning, and as soon as I saw a nuclear power plant, I jumped out of bed. I didn't care. Just jumped out of bed. I went onto the Reddit, on Twitter, anywhere that I could find the latest news and breaking updates, because I thought if this goes, top side up or bottom side, if this goes bad, this could be like the end of all of surrounding area. I'm very close to that nuclear power plant. So I was thinking, okay, this could be it. This is the end of my life. And so I was just hooked. I was glued to my computer screen and on my phone, just looking for the latest updates, making sure that everything was okay. I wouldn't go back to bed until I knew that the situation was stabilized. So I felt like that was Yah's way to see what was in my heart, number one, and to see what I would do. And then only a month later, the news about the coronavirus broke. So I did the same thing. I said, okay, this isn't in Canada. I understand that, but it's all the way in China. But just because it's all the way, across the world doesn't mean it can't come here. Just because my neighbor is going through difficulties doesn't mean it can't happen to me. Do you see what I mean? Like, to say that I'm invincible and I can't be touched that's pretty arrogant, to think that I will not be affected by what's around me. Although we do have faith, but we have to make sure that we're watching. Even Yeshua said, watch. We're supposed to watch, stay on guard. We guard the Sabbath, we should also guard, be on guard and be circumspect, be vigilant, because Satan is around. He wants to eat us. He's a lion on the prowl, waiting for us to let our guard down. So if we don't stay informed about the current events and not just take the mainstream news as the gospel, but we actually do our research, we look at what people are actually saying that live in those areas, then we can get a better perspective and not just believe the narrative that is being pushed, which was at that time, it's just the flu and it's going to go away in the summertime. We know now that all those were lies. So anyway, where was I? All right. There was an overabundance of rain and snow across the Middle East. Then we had what many news reports claimed was a biblical plague of locusts across Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf states, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. These locusts were eating all the vegetation and leaving nothing behind. This included the food crops. And I just have to add there that it has expanded. They've moved to Asia, or they've broadened their reach to Asia. The locusts are not localized in Africa. They've broken containment, so to speak. They're out of the Middle East, and they're also going to Asia, which means they're going to Europe next, and most likely, I think they're going to eat everything in that side of the world. But I don't believe they will reach North America and South America. And Australia is a lost cause because the fires burned all their crops, most of it anyway. So yeah, we can see a worldwide famine coming. Then we had the coronavirus outbreak in China. It is now spreading to every country around the world. And it was declared officially a pandemic on Passover Day, March 10th, 2020. And it's not like they knew it was Passover either. We have to remember that. They didn't know it was Passover because if we were to ask them, when's Passover? Then they look at the calendar and they'll go by the halal too, the traditional calculated method, not based on scripture. But they actually announced it the day that is scriptural, which is it's quite remarkable. And it's not a coincidence by any means. Or it's not a coincidence. It's definitely, you can see Yah's fingerprints on that. This little germ, sounds cute, this little germ, this little virus is causing stock markets around the world to crash and countries to shut down flights and visitors from certain nations. Okay, so they're shutting down flights and preventing visitors from coming in. Whole cities of millions are under quarantine, and tour groups are being locked up on cruise ships around the world. Italy and Israel are closing down. It is becoming terrifying, and I want to add, it's also amazing. Not that it's not a morbid fascination, but it's the speed. It's amazing, the speed of it all, and to see that when Jehovah's plan, when he plans something, he's right on schedule. We may not see it, but it's going to his exact precise schedule at his precise timing, to the minute, to the second. And it is so amazing just how quickly it's happening, and how efficiently it's happening, and just how world changing it all is. I've done so many videos about the coronavirus and have broadcast the warning since January 30th. I've been telling people to stock up on food and but everyone probably thought it was crazy, just like they thought of Joseph since 2005. So I definitely know how he feels in a small way. So yeah, it's quite amazing just how Jehovah executes his plan. He's using this virus. It's moving by his decree, by his command. He can say up to here and no further. He can say, I only want this amount of people to be affected, not this amount. I want a remnant to remain, and for this reason. Obviously, not obviously, but at least to me, it's obvious that he's using this as a wake-up call for people to repent. All people, whether in the faith or not of the faith, to turn to Him. So I've been preaching that, and I didn't even want to. It's not something I had premeditated. I'm going to start preaching and preaching repentance of all things. That was the last thing I would probably do in my life. But as I saw these things, these events worsening, I felt like there was no choice. It's either I speak or remain quiet. To remain quiet was to have blood on my hands and have guilt on my conscience. I couldn't stay quiet. I felt like if I said nothing, then even the trees, even the rocks would cry out, and the blood of all the people who will die and have died will condemn me for not speaking up. Even though I saw all these things happen, and I knew that it was tied to what Yehoshua said in Luke 21 and Matthew 24. I am deeply convicted that his words are true, and they've been ongoing since he said them, but they're being fully filled and have reached the tipping point. So we're seeing that starting to boil over. This is the beginning of the birth pangs. Okay. Where am I now? Best case scenario of COVID-19. 15 million people will die. This is the best case scenario. 15 million, 1-5, will die, and the global economy will take a $2.3 trillion dollar hit from coronavirus in the best case scenario, new study predicts. So I'm not going to read it, but that sums it up. I've made other predictions, and that is a best case scenario, that only 15 million people die. Best case scenario, that's only like in one country. Worldwide, we could see 1 billion die, or 500 million. But it's going to be at minimum, when all this blows over, 400 million. Bare minimum. It's not going to be any less than that. And I don't like to say that. I don't say that without feeling. I say that very soberly, because we're all mortal, we're all human, and I could very well be one of those statistics. So the next headline reads, the article came across my desk. It is happening so fast, I cannot keep up. China now has to fight coronavirus and bird flu. So that's why I've been saying that too. Coronavirus, bird flu, swine flu, they've got at least 3 plagues going on in their country right now at the same time, all at the same time, and not like small concentrations. It's breaking out throughout the country, nationwide. That is a judgment by Elohim, no doubt, without a doubt. That is a judgment for their poor hygiene practices, for their cruelty, for persecuting believers, for communism and killing so many unborn babies, so many babies who are already born when they had the one-child rule. They forced women to be sterilized. So many atrocities, unspeakable atrocities to humans and animals, just some of the most cruel practices ever committed in human history. And I'd say it actually, if the Nazis are number 2, the Chinese communists they far outrank them in the cruelty department and their inhumanity to humanity. So I have no qualms. I have no doubts that Yah is using it as a judgment in China. But I do pray for those Chinese citizens, not the government, but the citizens who are the victims in this. Okay, continuing on. So it says here, 2. So they're dealing with coronavirus and the bird flu. Highly pathogenic avian influenza hits 2 Chinese provinces near Hubei. And that's the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak. New headline. We have been warning you since 2005. check my battery. Oh, my battery's about to die. Good thing I checked it. I better plug this in before the stream will end abruptly. Don't want that to happen. Okay. I have told you many times already how the sabbatical and Jubilee year cycles were revealed to me once I repented and began to obey the feast days according to Jehovah's calendar and no longer according to the Halal 2 calendar. The year 2005, I was tested as to whether I would keep the Passover 30 days ahead of when everyone else I knew was going to keep them. I was doing it according to the barley and the crescent moon for the first time. It was at this same time, in fact, this same day, that I was shown the sabbatical and jubilee cycles. Wow, that's all I gotta say is wow. That year at Sukkot, I was given the opportunity to teach on this subject and explain how the Jubilee cycles revealed end time prophecy. I had been trying to explain this to my United Church of God brethren who did not want to hear it. After all, I had not gone to Ambassador College, so what did I know? From Sukkot onwards, I sought out any means possible to share this message, and I kept trying to figure out how I could break out and have videos and regular teachings to do this by. I just want to mention that, I remember when Joseph left, because, I was attending United Church of God since 2000 and around 2000, 2001, and Joseph had left 2005. Our pastor at the time, I won't say names, but anyway, our pastor had told them, you can't talk about the Bible. You can't talk about the Bible during fellowship because it doesn't line up with our doctrines, like the fundamental beliefs. But I mean, that's the mentality in the churches of God. You can't talk about anything they don't teach, even though it's in the Bible, even though the new moons are in the Bible, even though the tzitzit tassels are in the Bible, but you can't talk about them because, they don't want to lose members. They don't want to lose money. Let's be real. They don't want to lose revenue. They see brethren as merchandise. They see it as a business, and that's wrong. That was never what Yehoshua intended. Never at any point in time were we supposed to be seen as dollar signs. No, we're supposed to be seen as a family. We are all brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers. We're all part of the same family. So if someone is suffering, you shouldn't even think twice to help them out and give them financial assistance. Someone in the faith, I'm saying. If someone has been promoted to a job, you won't think twice of congratulating them and being happy for them, because that's your brother, it's your sister. It's not just some guy across the street or in another town that just happens to show up once a week at the same joint you go to. So it's absurd. Like some of the politics and things like that in churches of God, but that's just the way it is. But I remember hearing about Sighted Moon. I think that was when I started going to Church of God International, and I would see Joseph attend some of these seminars. There was one on the blood moons, and I saw him there, and he spoke to me afterwards, and he told me, they didn't really present what I spoke to them about, that these aren't just coincidences, because all they said at the seminar, they said, oh, these are not by accident. These blood moons fall on the holy days to show us that we must keep the holy days, and that's not wrong. But the real, like the deeper meaning to all of that was these were warnings. All these blood moons were warnings telling us that we need to repent. Yeah, keep the holy days, but these are warnings that something big is about to happen. Something massive, and it's here. Whatever was warning us back in 2016, all those tetrads, the 4 blood moons, that's here now. It's just starting. It's the beginning. So Joseph was right. What he was saying, you should have said this, and they didn't want to because they didn't want people to walk out. That was their thing. We don't want people to walk out. No, we don't want to ruffle feathers. Well, you either warn them, and they're going to prepare, or you don't blow the trumpet. You don't sound the trumpet, and that's on you now. So, it's your own destruction anyway. But Joseph has been preaching this as he should, rightly so. And Jehovah moved him to do this. And I was skeptical at first because I hadn't proved it to myself. It was only in the year 2015, 2016, where one of the Sukkots, it was the Hillel Sukkot, it was in my heart to read not his books, it was someone else's paper. It was called the Henderson Paper. It's referred to as the Henderson Paper in Churches of God. A member named by the last name Henderson did a study paper and submitted it to the Doctrinal Committee of the Church of God, CAGWA, or was it UCG? Either one. And he was kicked out of the church. He was suspended until further notice while his paper was being evaluated. I questioned that strongly. So I investigated and said, okay, let's read this paper. And my goal was to prove the new moons were false. That was my goal. I wanted to see, okay, you know what? I'm going to prove to Joseph, to all these new moon people, this is not scriptural, and we should go by Hillel too. But the more I studied, the deeper I got into the truth of what Jehovah was actually instructing us to do, the more the truth jumped out. It's like an atheist, or not even an atheist. It's like a Sunday keeper trying to prove what day is the seventh day, that Sunday is the seventh day, and you just can't do it. It's impossible to prove God wrong, to prove that Elohim is wrong. So I tried to prove Elohim wrong. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was trying to prove, Jehovah, you're wrong. I know what I'm doing. The Jews know what they're doing. They've been doing it for thousands of years. But we've been wrong all this time. And I was afraid I was convicted in my heart. The new moons, the sighted moon calendar was the way to go. And that was even before the Aviv barley. It was just based on sighted moon. And I was afraid to do that because I could foresee that the moment I started doing this, I would separate myself from the rest of my family, who also keep the feast days, but based on Hillel 2 calendar. And I became very sad because I was a young man back then, or younger man. I was, 5 years younger, so I was like 32. So I thought to myself, man, if I'm having a hard time finding a wife now, I probably will die single if I go by this way. But I thought, it's either I do what God wants me to do, if I obey Jehovah, or I just do my own way. But I made a promise, I made a covenant when I was baptized. I said to Elohim, I said to him, and I promise you that I'll obey you to the best of my ability all the days of my life and never depart from it. That's what I promised, in this life and in the next. Because there's no other way to live. There's no other one who has the words of life, who has the way of life, the creed that will give us true happiness, that will give us prosperity and blessings. And yeah, there's suffering, there's trials. We're going through a big one right now. But there's benefits where he tells you in advance, he leads you in the right way. If it were not for Yeshua, if it were not for me keeping this way and leading up to this moment, I wouldn't have food stored up. I would be a lost cause. I would be at the mercy of the government. I would starve to death. Yeah, I would. But by His grace, by His favor, me and I'm sure a lot of other people who uh, follow this way, follow the way, Jehovah has opened their ears, opened their eyes, softened their hearts to take it seriously, to take Him seriously. So anyway, that was such a big tangent, but I thought it was important that I mentioned that, because as much as I have a story, all our stories connect. Joseph's story, my story, another person's story, Becca's story. All our lives are intertwined like a tapestry. We are all one body in the Shia, and He brought us together. Boy, it just gets me emotional just talking about it. I'm gonna just keep going with the newsletter. It is holy time, and I feel a special like inspiration on this day, because it is holy time, and the words are even more special too. Okay, so I'm just going to read the last sentence again. From Sukkot onwards, I sought out any means possible to share this message, and I kept trying to figure out how I could break out and have videos and regular teachings to do this by. Then in March 2008, I was given the chance to do exactly this on the Prophecy Club. And I toured 10 cities in 12 days across the entire USA. At the end, they made a video of my presentation. You can watch part 1 and part 2 at these links. By the end of part 1, I've explained the first 2 curses of Leviticus 26, and I begin the third curse, which I then go into detail in part 2. I encourage you all to go back 12 years ago to my first video in my first tour presenting this subject. So that first video, wow. Let me just take a look. I won't play it, but I'll just take a look at it. You can probably see it behind me once it loads. I'll load. Let me just let it load. Okay. After this tour, I then put my notes about this into our weekly newsletter in 2008 and again in 2009. I'm telling you this. Oh, hold on. Those notes would then be taken off. Sorry, those notes would then be taken and used in our first book, The Prophecies of Abraham, which was then published in 2010. I am telling you this so that you can verify, and so that you know I have not changed my message over the years. I have said the same thing consistently since the beginning. I have refined it over the years, and it has all been coming true. Stunningly, accurately true. Who else is telling you about the sabbatical and jubilee years? Who is teaching you about the curses that come at certain times in that jubilee cycle? Who else is showing you end-time prophecy by understanding the jubilee cycles? Who? Sadly, we are the only ministry doing this, and we have done so since 2005. Will you now get behind this ministry and begin to support it with your hard-earned finances? We have much to do and next to no time to get it done. We need you now. Funds. I spent all my funds on preparing for this pandemic. But if I had money, I definitely would. Actually, I already donated some money, so I guess I'm covered in that area. I just donated by buying the books. So that's my way to contribute, is by buying the books. Yeah, I remember Joseph. He actually released the book No man knows the hour. No man can know the day or hour. He released that for free in his newsletter on a PDF. But I said to myself, you know what? I want to contribute. So let me buy the book, so the money goes towards him instead of me just giving him money for like I want to have a book. I like to have something. So I like to read my hard copy book. So that's my way of contributing anyway. Yeah. The next phase is soon to begin. We want you to invest in your future the same as you would invest in your retirement funds. If you do not put into it, if you do not put anything into it, then you can expect to get nothing out of it when you need it. Stop putting it off. Do it now. If you have not read our teachings in the prophecies of Abraham, or remembering the sabbatical year of 2016, or the 2300 days of hell, or it was a riddle, not a command, or the blood moon, the elephant in the room. Actually, I read all of them except the blood moon one. And our study manual, Lessons for the Kingdom. I didn't read that one either. Then I cannot urge you strongly enough to get them now and begin to study. Prove us wrong if you can. Many have tried, and they are now working with us, supporting this work. Ooh, I'm one of those. I tried to prove you wrong. And now I'm recording live streams, reading the newsletters. Oh, man. Not that I wasn't ever against Joseph. I wasn't antagonistic. I was just trying to prove the new moon thing wrong, the sighted moon thing. And that was the Henderson paper. And then one thing led to another, which led to me getting the sabbatical year book. And that was whatever the new moon paper did. It was called something for the scriptural calendar, biblical calendar, the paper from Henderson. Whatever that was just like dipping my toe in the water. And then when I read the sabbatical years book, it was like diving into the ocean. It was a lot. It was a lot to take. And 2300 Days of Hell was just diving deeper. Okay. Where is this? Many have tried. Okay. Many have tried, and they are now working with us and supporting this work. But you might be the first to do so. To what? Oh, to prove us wrong? So please do try. Yeah, I do try to prove them wrong. There are some things I don't want to go on talking about them. That's not productive. It's not going to be beneficial for anyone. So I'll keep those to myself. It's not going to help. But they're not major things anyway. They're just minor disagreements, and not really. I wouldn't say there's something that. Anyway, the end. I have next copied our teaching on this third curse from, I think it was 2008. Okay. And what I use is that there are blessings, and the second pertains to what most people forget to read, which has to do with the fact that there are also curses for not keeping these commandments of Jehovah. The amazing thing is that these curses are given out in 7-year increments, exactly in the same order of the Jubilee cycle of 7-year sabbaticals. Here is a list of the curses found in Leviticus. The first curse, you know what? I'm going to read them, but in Septuagint. So these are big. These are curses. So let's look at these curses according to the Septuagint, which is I like to see it as the purest form of the word, besides the original very first copy that was in Hebrew. 26, right? 26:14. But if you will not listen to me, nor obey these my ordinances, but disobey them, and your soul should loathe my judgments, so that you should not keep all my commands, so as to break my covenant, Then will I do this to you. I will even bring upon you perplexity and the itch and the fever that causes your eyes to waste away, and disease that consumes your life. And you shall sow your seeds in vain, and your enemies shall eat them, shall pursue you, and you shall flee, no one pursuing you. The second curse. And if you still refuse to listen to me, then will I chasten you yet even more, 7 times more for your sins. And I will break down the haughtiness of your pride, and I will make your heaven iron, and your earth as it were brass. And your strength shall be in vain, and your land shall not yield its seed, and the tree of your field shall not yield its fruit. Okay. The third curse. And if after this you should walk perversely and not be willing to obey me, I will further bring upon you 7 plagues according to your sins. And I will send upon you the wild beasts of the land, and they shall devour you, and shall consume your cattle. And I will make you few in number, and your ways shall be desolate. Wow, that sounds like China right now. Like all these diseases come from animals, and it's destroying all their livestock and killing people off, depopulating them, and all their highways, all their malls, all their establishments are like a ghost town. They're desolate, exactly like this. And if hereupon you are not corrected, but walk perversely towards me, where is it at? 26. I also will walk with you with a perverse spirit, and I also will smite you 7 times for your sins. And I will bring upon you a sword, avenging the cause of my covenant. Oh, what happened there? Okay. Avenging the cause of my covenant, and you shall flee. You shall flee for refuge to your cities, and I will send out death against you, and you shall be delivered into the hands of your enemies. When I afflict you with famine of bread, then 10 women shall bake your loaves in one oven, and they shall render your loaves by weight, and you shall eat and not be satisfied. That's only the fourth curse, still more to go. The fifth and final curse. And if hereupon you will not obey me, but walk perversely towards me, then will I walk with you with a froward mind, and I will chasten you 7-fold according to your sins, and you shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters shall you eat. That sounds like a severe famine. And I'll render your pillars desolate, and I will utterly destroy your wooden images made with hands, and I will lay your carcasses on the carcasses of your idols, and my soul shall loathe you, and I will lay your cities waste, and I will make your sanctuaries desolate, and I will not smell the savor of your sacrifices. And I will lay ISIS tells all its jihadists, do not attack, America and UK because you could get infected by the virus. So like they must be wondering, like, wow, look at this. They're wondering at it. And I will scatter you among the nations, and the sword shall come upon you and consume you. And your land shall be desolate, and your cities shall be desolate. Then the land shall enjoy its Shabbats all the days of its desolation. and you shall be in the land of your enemies. Then the land shall keep its Shabbats, the Shemitahs, and the land shall enjoy uh, its Shabbats all the days of its desolation. It shall keep Shabbats which it kept not among your Shabbats when you dwelt in it. And to those who are left of you, I will bring bondage into their heart in the land of their enemies, and the sound of a shaken leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee. As fleeing from war, and shall fall when none pursues them. And brother shall disregard brother, as in war, when none pursues, and you shall not be able to withstand your enemies. And you shall perish among the Gentiles, and the land of your enemies shall devour you. And those who are left of you shall perish because of their sins, and because of the sins of their fathers, and the land of their enemies shall they consume away. This is very tough and very difficult to understand for many of you who already think you're saved and that you're already good. I go into a lot of detail in my DVD and explain each one of these curses as they are laid out above. And I show from history how Jehovah has applied these exact same curses to the nations of Israel and Judah in the same order that he has told us above. Again, the scriptures already quoted come to mind. Hebrews 13:8, Malachi 3:6. Jehovah does not change. Therefore his curses and the order in which they are meted out, do not change either. He is the same as he was in the days of Adam, as he is today with us. With this understanding, I was able to make the following chart on the next page. So these charts, there's a column pertaining to the years of the Jubilee cycles. Shows you which years are sabbatical years, the current Gregorian years, excuse me, counting years 1 to 7 repeatedly throughout the Jubilee cycles. There's a column 5 shows us which sabbatical cycle we are in. Oh, an alarm. Hold on. Turn that off. Okay. Column 6 shows us when the first curse accumulating. Column 7 shows when the second curse of drought and severe weather happens. Again, it is added to the first curse. Column 8 shows the third curse of pestilence. Excuse me. And it is added to the previous 2. Take note that this curse throughout the scriptures is almost always mentioned in accordance with accordance with it. You will also note that in this column are the fall holy days. They are listed here because the 8th day festival, Pentecost, and the year of the Jubilee all have a similar teaching or theme. It was in noticing this that I was able to count back by the number of years. In the same manner as there are the number of days. Hold on. It was in noticing this that I was able to count back by the number of years. In the same manner as there is a number of days between each of the fall holy days, Okay, in the same manner as there is a number of days between each of the fall holy days. By doing this, I was able to fill in the rest of this Jubilee cycle. Continuing on, column 9, the fourth curse of the sword of war. This is when Israel is defeated. And also in this column are the years of the Great Tribulation, counting back from the year of atonement when all the curses are. Column 10 shows the fifth curse of captivity, which is a result of the fourth curse of war. Also in this column are shown the 3.5 years that Israel, the woman, goes into hiding at the end of the Great Tribulation. It was from understanding the chart on the next page and how these curses are being told to us on the nightly news each night that I came to understand the prophecies of Abraham. So there's a scripture here, Matthew 16, 1-4. So I'll just refer to that. And then if you will, I'm going to try to move, but if you look behind me, do I do this? Oh, this is not going to work. Okay, just do it that way. You can see behind me. I'm just going to make sure that I'm drought. There has been many droughts. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but if you do your research, pestilence, and again, to reiterate, these curses continue. So you could really just visualize terror is continuing throughout. Okay, and same with and terror. It's just an ongoing, continual curse. Right, and then 2010 to 2016 pestilence, and SARS broke out actually in 2003, which is over here. 2017 to 2023 is where we find ourselves. So pestilence. SARS wasn't a global pandemic, or it was, but not to this degree. It only killed, I believe, less than 1,000 people. So some may argue, there was a pestilence, but how come it was 2003? That's because it wasn't to the scale that Jehovah, in my opinion, wasn't what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about, we're going to kill 1,000 people. He's talking millions. This is going to be perplexing. It's going to be to the point where we see now grocery stores all around the world being emptied. Panic buying. All right, 2017, yeah. So the increase of warfare. 2023 to 2030. Captivity. I don't believe we've seen any captivities since, what was the last major captivity? Probably in World War II, where the Jews were hoarded up and the Armenians were hoarded up by the Turks. I believe that was, World War I, maybe, the Armenian genocide. But Darfur and Sudan, there's captivity there, regards to the those who are extremists in Sudan. They are herding up Christians and killing them en masse, genocide. And 2031 to 2033, hiding. After that, tabernacles starts. 2033, atonement, or it's so wow, actually we're right here. So trumpets is boom. So I'm not sure what to expect. I might have forgotten the exact event. I'm not going to, I can speculate, maybe that's King David, I'm not sure, but as far as I can remember, that I don't think that's King David. if I recollect, if I remember correctly, the two witnesses actually show up around here, the ministry, right, leading up to their death in 2030, and then I may be getting it wrong, but anyway, the two witnesses are around this. This just from what I remember, anyway. Tabernacles 2033, sorry, 38, and then the eighth day 2045. 2045 is the eighth day. So it was by understanding Leviticus 26 and the nightly news that I was able to discern the signs of the times we are currently in. Please do watch my DVD at, there's a link there, page ID 251. Let him do the same for you. But know that time is quickly marching on. Actually, I'm thankful too that Jehovah opened the eyes of Joseph regarding this coronavirus, because at the time, at the end of January, this is his video, that the first video that they filmed of him when he was talking about the first time he did the ministry for the Sukkot. So that's what it looks like. Prophecy Club. Just look at the very first few seconds, see what it looks like. Not getting any sound.
The Prophecy Club also hosts approximately 40 major city meetings per month.
Oh yeah, I remember
Setting
this.
days, just teaching what the Jubilee cycles
He's
portray.
wearing the,
I think
Talit.
It's Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and those countries.
Okay, so I'm going to close
So
that.
this is very important to understand, because if you think it
Back
only
to the newsletter. But yeah, I'm thankful that Yah opened Joseph's eyes about this, because I was following it pretty obsessively since January, end of January. And I'm sure Joseph was following it too, but we were in correspondence, and I told him, yeah, this is really serious, it's pretty bad. And, he just, Jehovah's Spirit is a uniting force. So, a lot of people, a lot of brethren, even in the faith and in those in churches of God and Messianic, whatever you want to call it, the way, there's a lot that are still not taking it seriously. But thankfully, there's a lot who are, what I found is people are keeping a sighted moon calendar and the Vive Barley, like everyone's on board. It's almost unanimous that everyone is prepared, and they do see this is, well, obviously because of the timeline. I mean, the timeline is one of the biggest evidences pointing to that. So, yeah, thanks be to Jehovah that has led us to that understanding. It's Yehoshua. A lot of people think that we're sheep. We're all sheep, and they like to use that as an insult. That you're sheep, well, you just go by the herd, mentality, mob mentality. It's not an insult to me. I don't take that as an insult when someone calls me a sheep, because I will confess, yeah, I am a sheep, because my shepherd is Yehoshua. He leads me in the right path. He leads me in a narrow gate. He shows us the things we need to do well in advance. But these other sheep are not of his flock, so they're lost. Sad to say, they're lost, and all these events happen to them, and it takes them by surprise. So yes, I am a sheep, but I'm only a sheep because I'm because the shepherd of my soul, our shepherd is Yehoshua, the good shepherd. So, I'm just thankful for that. Very, very thankful. Okay, where am I now? Chapter 1, Abraham's famine and chronology. Okay, we're about halfway through. I don't know if we aren't going to finish this. So let's see. We'll see what we can get done. Having now explained all of this, in order for you to understand the many things that simply are not being taught nearly to the extent they should be, I hope you will now be ready to grasp the significant teachings and insights into the prophecies of Abraham as we set out to delve more deeply into this most amazing subject. On January 17th of 2009, I sent out a newsletter to our largest ever mailing of over 10,000 readers. You can review the entire article, and there's a link there. The title is Does Yahweh Change or His Punishments Change? I wrote this article to show how the third curse of Leviticus 26 was in force even in Abraham's time, before the land was ever given to him. This curse was applied to the world at that time, just as the third curse will apply to the whole world in our time. I did this in order to put to rest the one excuse many were using in order to not keep the sabbatical year. That excuse is found in Leviticus 25, verse 2, where Moses was told to tell the people that when they come into the land, they shall keep the sabbatical years. People have reasoned and done so wrongly that this means the sabbatical years are only for when you are in the land. Not so. They are for the whole world and for all people to obey everywhere. And for all time, I must add. That was why I wrote that article. But looking back, I now see how I was being directed to share the series of prophecies given to us by our father Abraham. I'm also seeing how this famine, once it starts, will last for years, right up until the end, when 1/4 of the Earth's total population will die of starvation, famine, and the sword. That is, the famine will increase some years and decrease in other years. You should be aware that as of this writing in 2009, the current food supply is just one small disaster away from famine conditions. Wow, that was so on the mark. We no longer have ample supplies of food stored away for a rainy day. Those days are now history. This is a serious warning to each of you, brethren. If you do not act on those things I'm about to share here, then in a short time you will not be able to act on them at all, due to the dollar no longer being of any value. That's what's happening. The stock market is crashing, and even if you have $1 million, you would be hard pressed to trade that $1 million for people's food. If you find somebody with a 10-year supply of food and you have somebody with $10 million, I'd rather be in the first camp, not the latter camp, because money will be of no value. Food will be the currency. I said that in a previous video of mine. Along with this hyperinflation, you will also have to deal with the following curse in Leviticus, and that's talking about wild beasts robbing you of your children, livestock. We read that. I have been telling you since 2005, August 2005, that this third curse is going to rob you of your children, but take special note of the last part of the verse. It says that your highways shall be desolate. Desolate is the word shaman, and it means the following: to be desolate, to be appalled, stun, and stupefy. Okay, I won't go over those. It's pretty much, he explained it. Your roadways, your highways will be deserted. The plague will cause all traffic to stop. No one will be driving. Whoa, wait. This is from 2009. This is from 2009. It's happening right now. Wow. Okay, that's like, wow. Bullseye. flying or going by trains for fear of catching the plague. Wait, did he really write this in 2009? Because this is like Nostradamus level. This is too accurate now. Makes me starting to shiver. You can be absolutely positive that no country will let you in if you're coming from a place that has these out of control plagues ravaging the land. Wow. Okay, I don't know. This should be a meme. That should be the meme. He wrote this in 2009, people. This is 11 years ago. And this is reading like what's happening just in the last week. You should tweet this. Someone should be like, this is from 2009. Then you know what people are going to say? They're going to say, that's a hoax. That's a hoax. He wrote that yesterday. That's what they're going to say. Oh, man. I just had to take a moment there. This is real. These events are real, and what he said from 2009. Because I wasn't reading the newsletters back then. I only started reading them in maybe a couple of years ago. 2-3 years ago, I started reading them. It's been hard to stay current because sometimes I don't have the time to read them, and sometimes I'm on the road, so I'm unable to read and drive. So I would wish someone would do an audio newsletter, and that's what I'm doing. So let's stick with it. All right, from the Independent paper in the UK, April 12th, 2008, is a report talking about the newest development of the bird flu, which could cause a pandemic, killing millions. This is an epidemic being brought to us by wild beasts, just as Leviticus 26 warns us. And that's what I was saying too. Just said that a few minutes ago. Then in July 2009, the headline news from the UK is that the government expects 100,000 new cases of swine flu per day by the end of August 2009. Wow, okay. Actually, I just want to chime in here. It's almost midnight, so whoever's watching, don't worry, this is going to be uploaded on YouTube. So I know we have an early morning tomorrow, so feel free to get ready for bed and go to bed early so you can wake up for the Zoom meeting at 9 a.m. For my part, I'm going to finish this, and I'll try to, I'm going to set all my alarms, wake up at like 9. I'll wake up at 9 sharp and then join you all for that. So I probably will be going to bed by 2 at this rate. So I'm about 60% through this newsletter. And let's see how long this stream has been. An hour 45. Okay. All right. So it's probably another 40 minutes or so. I don't know, 30 minutes. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. Then again, in the papers comes the following article from Reuters of Hong Kong on November 25th of 2009 that China experts warn of a pandemic flu mutation. Or the H1N1 swine flu could mix with the H5N1 bird flu because both of these influenza are now present in China, which, if combined, would be a fast transmissible virus with deadly results. Actually, you know what? I know COVID-19 coronavirus is like a new virus, but it's quite possible that it has mutated as a result of the avian flu, the swine flu, and the SARS virus all joining together and uniting as an unholy trinity of epidemic scale. Brethren, I urge you to consider the times we are now entering and consider those things that Abraham is going to show us, and then act. These are the most serious of times. This is the third curse of Leviticus 26, which is explained in great detail on the DVD that I urge you to watch. Let me say it again. Because Jehovah does not change, neither do his punishments, or the order in which he gives them out. And again, Hebrews 13:8 and Malachi 3:6. We have been emphasizing the third curse, which is now here, and is as follows. Leviticus 26, 21 to 22. On my website, I posted the following newsletter, 5844. That was 12 years ago. 008, which can be read at this address, ID 246. In it, I show you as much as I can about this third curse and how it has played out in history repeatedly during this third cycle of the Jubilee cycle. We shall read it next. So actually, you know what? I hope somebody can confirm that this right here, I'm going to tweet this actually. You know what? I should tweet it and say this was written in 2009 by one Joseph Dumont. And this was 11 years ago. And this is happening to a T. I'm going to do that right now, actually, on the live stream. Let me just tweet that, because there's no point in me saying it. 2005, okay. When did he write this? You know what? I'm not sure if he wrote this in 2009. Did he? It's too eerily accurate. I might have to look in the book. Did he say this from the book? Yeah, if it's in the book, I'll just take a picture and then I'll tweet it, because it's going to take too long. Unless I just do that now, but no, it's going to take too long for me to find it. I'll just trust that it's in the book and I'll look for it and then take a picture and tweet it. We shall read it next. Okay, where am I? We have been emphasizing the third curse, which is now here, and as follows on my website. Okay, we shall read it next. Okay. 1961 to 1975, a 1960s cholera called El Tor. Here is the last Jubilee cycle. In it, you can see the years that this plague took place in. It was third, fourth, and part of the fifth sabbatical cycles. All this information comes from Wikipedia, so as not to be influenced by my own thoughts. And you can see that there. I don't know if it's visible. Let me just move out of the way. Yeah, okay. Just make sure that, just throw this right there. Okay, you can see that. 1912 to 1926, 1899 to 1923, cholera, and 1918 to 1920, avian flu. The word rob in Leviticus 26, verse 21, is Strong 7921, only used in this one place. Shakol is the word, shakol, to suffer abortion, miscarriage, make childless, lose children, destroy, miscarry, spoil, rob of children. And the word desolate is Strong's 8074, is shamem, appalled, awestruck, shunned, horrified, devastated, ravaged, astounded. In 1918, the flu pandemic, killed 20 to 40 million worldwide. 20 to 40 million. Also take note that the cholera epidemic lasted until the year 1926. And when did it start? Cholera. I think that's what Tchaikovsky died of, the famous composer. The cholera epidemic lasted until the year 1926, which it did not color in this chart. Again, these plagues cover 2 full sabbatical cycles and the first year of the 5th sabbatical cycle. You know, I did a project in grade school, Tchaikovsky. And I feel like he might have died from this plague. Yeah. No. Okay, he died in 1893. Life. Childhood. Because I remember Tchaikovsky's death has been attributed to cholera from drinking unboiled water at a local restaurant. Okay, well, it says the cholera epidemic, it started in 1899, and he died. Tchaikovsky died in 1893. So that was before that. Oh well. But it was cholera anyway, that's what they say in Wikipedia. 1863 to 1877, cholera again. Oh, he could have died from it. As we go further back in time, we see that the next Jubilee cycle, there was another cholera plague starting in 1863 and going to 1877. Again, I've retrieved my information from Wikipedia and not made up my own dates. Again, this plague grows from the third sabbatical cycle to the first year of the fifth, sabbatical cycle. Wow. 1814 to 1828, 1816 to 1826, 1829 to 1851, cholera. That just keeps coming back. Again, in this Jubilee cycle, the plague begins 1814, and then subsequent plagues go all the way to 1851. I only recorded on this chart those years that matched what we are showing you from 1814 to 1828. Okay, let's pick it up. 1765 to 1779, 1775 to 76. We have now gone back 5 Jubilee cycles, and we are seeing a clear pattern that in the third and fourth sabbatical cycles, and the first year of the fifth sabbatical cycles, plagues are part of the life of the tribes of Israel. 1716 to 30 and 1732 to 33, influenza. We have now gone back 6 Jubilee cycles with the same pattern. So there is a pattern. Oops. When we keep going back and checking other plagues that struck the Israelite nations, we can see that some hit during our time that we are looking at. Some hit during our time, during the time we are looking at, while others did not. I will highlight those that fit our observation. And then there's all this list. I'm not going to go through them all, but just be sure that these fit. Oh, the ones that fit are red. The ones that don't are in white. There's a plague of sweating. That's kind of interesting. How can you die from sweating? The coronavirus and our current Jubilee cycle. Okay. Let me just... What is cholera? Keep hearing about this. What is it? Must have to do with your... must have to do with cholesterol? I would think I would know, but I haven't had to deal with that in my lifetime. An infectious disease that causes severe watery diarrhea, which can lead to dehydration and even death if untreated. It is caused by eating food or drinking water contaminated with bacterium called Vibrio cholerae. Oh, wow. It's called the Blue Death. A person dying of cholera may lose so many body fluids that their skin turns bluish gray. Wow. What's the cure? Rehydration, IV fluids, antibiotics, zinc supplements. Well, at least we can treat it. Boy. The coronavirus and our current Jubilee cycle. We have now gone back 6 Jubilee cycles with the same pattern. Then we look Then when we look at our current and final Jubilee cycle, it's still perplexing to think about that. We're in the final cycle. Man, we could have lived any time of all these thousands of years, and we're alive right now, at this time, at this moment. Like Esther, like this is the moment. Man, what an honor it is. Boy, as hard as these times are, what an honor it is to live in these times, to be alive at all. Then when we look at our current and final Jubilee cycle for this 6th millennial day, we would expect to see the same pattern. This means that starting in the 3rd sabbatical cycle of 2010 and going until 2024 should be dominated by the news of plagues. Oh yeah, it's happening. We were writing about swine flu in 2009 and showing you how Mexico was shutting down just as Leviticus 26 said the cities would. But then it died off and it did not sweep the world as expected. We heard of bird flu and H1N1 and H5N1 in the subsequent years, but nothing happened. There was, and still is, Ebola in Africa, but it did not turn into a pandemic. Thank God it didn't. Wow. But now in 2020, a pandemic has emerged. The WHO has not declared it a pandemic. Oh, they just did, actually. Wait, did they? I think they did. But I'm not afraid to call it that. Let me now share with you a story you are all familiar with. And I want you to pay close attention to verse 13 and read it and think. So let's just, I'm going to read just verse 13 in that case. So I'm going to read from 2 Kings, because in my Bible it's Kings. And that's 24, verse 3, or verse 13. David rose early in the morning, and the word of Jehovah came to the prophet Gad, the seer, saying, Go and speak to David, saying, Thus says Jehovah, I bring one of 3 things upon you. Now choose you one of them, and I will do it to you. And Gad went in to David and told him, and said to him, Choose to befall you, whether there shall come upon you 3 years famine in your land, or that you should flee 3 months before your enemies, that they should pursue you, or that there should be 3 days mortality in the land. Now then, decide, and see what answer I shall return to him that sent me. And David said to Gad, On every side I am much straitened. Let me fall now into the hands of Jehovah, for his compassions are very many, and let me not fall into the hands of man. So I read that whole chunk there. So Jehovah sent a plague. Okay, that's the next verse. So David chose for himself the mortality, and they were the days of wheat harvest. And Jehovah sent a pestilence upon Israel from morning till noon. And the plague began among the people, and there died of the people from Dan, even to Beersheba, 70,000 men. Wow, in one day. And the angel of Jehovah stretched out his hand against Jerusalem to destroy it. And Jehovah repented of the evil and said to the angel that destroyed the people, It is enough now. Withhold your hand. The angel of Jehovah was by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And David spoke to Jehovah when he saw the angel smiting the people. And he said, Behold, it is I that have done wrong. But these sheep, what have they done? Let your hand, I pray you, be upon me and upon my father's house. Wow, so I mean, that's a good leader there. Although he made a mistake with the census, but anyhow. Verse 13 is describing the fourth curse as told to us in Leviticus 26. All right, we read that already. David had the choice of famine or sword or pestilence. The very same three things that were to happen during the fourth curse of Leviticus. When David sinned, it was during the fourth sabbatical cycle. And this is exactly why Jehovah in his mercy gave him the choice of one of the three. Again, I want you to note how the plague was ended by David. He made an offering to him. Read now 1 Chronicles. It's 1 Chronicles 21, verses 1 to 30. I just want to read the very first verse in my translation here. See what that says about Satan. 1 Chronicles 21. Just want to see how it's worded here. It says in the Masoretic that Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to take a census of Israel. But in the Septuagint, it says that, and it came to pass at the return of the year. No, that's not it. Is that it? 1 Chronicles 21? Oh, I'm on 20. Okay. And the devil stood up against Israel and moved David to number Israel. Wow. Man. I wonder what he did that made him so vulnerable to being moved. I mean, what did he do right before that? Because he must have been in a bad spiritual state then, if he was able to be moved. I don't know. I guess it's a study for another time. So yeah, verse 1 to 30 to 30. Yeah, it's interesting to see that in verse 27 of Chronicles 21. Scanning through that scripture, it says here that 27, and Jehovah spoke to the angel, and he put up the sword into its sheath. So a lot of people think it's very primitive and all that, to think that all these things happening are because of spiritual forces or the devil or the angels, and they don't believe that narrative. But who's controlling all these events? Who ultimately oversees everything? Not that. It goes according to his plan, doesn't it not? People ask, why is there suffering? Well, people sin, and the consequence of sin is suffering. So I know there's a booklet by Church of God that says, why is there suffering? Well, people make choices, and that's true, and they have to pay the consequences for that. But also, Elohim causes calamity as a result of us breaking his Torah and neglecting it and worshiping other gods and doing our own ways. choosing our own ways. So yeah, it's all connected, and even this virus is mobilizing and killing according to the commandment of Jehovah. And those people will not take it seriously. Well, you know, there will be casualties because they take his word lightly. And in fact, people say that, oh, you're afraid of the virus? Oh, you're not leaving your house? No, I'm afraid of Yah. I'm afraid of Elohim. He's the one who caused the virus. I'm respecting him and his power, not the power of the virus. I know that Jehovah is greater than the virus, but that virus came from him. Anyway, little aside. New headline: comparing what Moses did with King David. Comparing what Moses did with King David. Okay. The very next thing we read about of King David is in First Kings, when he was old and dying, and then Solomon took over. The year was 971 BC. This is in the fourth sabbatical cycle. We also have the story of the rebellion of Korah, and that's number 16, verses 1 to 50. So we just saved a lot of time there. You can read that on your own time. The reason I'm showing you about King David and the rebellion of Korah is simple. In both cases, the plague was stayed once they made offerings to Jehovah. Aharon offered incense in verse 46, and then Aharon made atonement for them. David bought the altar place for 600 shekels of gold. I think he means gold. And then made the offerings ready. Notice that it was Jehovah who provided the fire that consumed the offerings. So this is the last part of the newsletter. Incense offerings from the Jewish Encyclopedia. Let me just look and see how long this will take. This is probably going to take a good... it's going to take at least 10, 20 minutes. Oh, just another 20 minutes if I'm really, really fast. Maybe 30. Let me just look at the time. How much time have we... Oh, wow, we're almost at 3 hours. Yikes. YouTube really puts up with me uploading my big videos there. Incense, an aromatic substance which exhales perfume during combustion, the odor of spices and gums burned as an act of worship. In ancient times, let me just get my narrator voice going on. In ancient times, on account of the extreme heat of the Orient, incense was used, as it is today, to a much greater extent in the East than in the West. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, says Proverbs 27. Garments were perfumed to such an extent that an old marriage song could say of the royal bridegroom, "All your garments smell of myrrh and aloes and cassia." Beds were perfumed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. The bride in Cant 3 was perfumed with all sorts of incense, and noble guests were honored by being sprinkled with perfume or incense. It was customary among noble Jews to pass incense around on a brazier after meals. Sacrifices of incense. Under these circumstances, the use, with sacrifices of spices and perfumes that were burned as incense, seems a matter of course. It is an open question whether the ancient Hebrews ascribed to this incense any special efficacy in banning demons. But in any case, the offering of incense was widely practiced in the ancient Oriental religions. That it was a common adjunct of Egyptian worship is evident from the fact that in the representations of worship, the king is nearly always pictured with a censer in his hand, offering incense. Enormous quantities of spices were used for this purpose every year by the temples. According to one list, King Ramses III presented during the 31 years of his reign 368,461 jars. and 1,933,766 pieces of incense, honey, and oil. Incense is mentioned just as frequently in the Babylonian Assyrian cult. According to Herodotus, at the great yearly feast of Bel, 1,000 talents, 58,000 kilograms of incense were burned on his great altar. An Israelitish cult. I don't like the term cult when it comes to Israel, but okay, we'll go with that. It might be inferred from the foregoing, as a matter of course, that incense was also used in the cult of Israel. The offering of incense is not, however, mentioned till a comparatively late date in the Old Testament. Occupying a prominent position in the sacrificial legislation of the Middle Pentateuch, this sacrifice is mentioned seldom, if at all, in the historic and prophetic books. This is all the more remarkable since the Israelites must from early times have been acquainted with the ingredients themselves, the fragrant gums, etc. The caravans that carried the spices of Syria to the Egyptian markets went by way of Palestine, and the spices of southern Arabia were brought by Solomon to Jerusalem. Nevertheless, no trace can be found in Hebrew literature of the offering of incense in the time of the early kingdom, nor is it represented as a regular and especially important part of worship, as it became in later times. Although the noun and the verb occur, they do not designate incense burnt on the altar and its offering, as in the sacrificial legislation. It is rather a general term for the burning sacrifice and the sacrificial odor, and in the same way is used as an entirely general term for the burning of any gift on the altar. This cannot be accidental, for there is likewise no mention of the offering of incense in those passages where it might be expected. The prophets refer more than once to the vain endeavors of the people to gain Jehovah's favor. They enumerate all the things that the people are doing and all the gifts they offer, including even their own children, but nowhere is there an allusion to the holy sacrifice of incense. Jeremiah is the first to say, at such an enumeration, "To what purpose comes there to me incense from Sheba and the sweet cane from a far country?" It is clearly evident that the offering of incense is here still considered as something rare and precious, because the material of the incense comes from a far country and is valuable. Similarly, Isaiah says, "I have not caused you to serve with an offering, nor wearied you with incense." From this time onward, however, the offering of incense is mentioned much more frequently, and especially often in Chronicles. In view of these facts, it may be assumed that the incense offering was not frequent in the time of the earlier prophets, becoming more popular only in the time of Jeremiah, and that it did not become important as the most holy of offerings until the post-exilic period. Legal ordinances. In the sacrificial legislation of the Pentateuch, the incense offering is mentioned both as a concomitant of other offerings and by itself. As regards the former, every meat offering, mina, required the addition of incense, which was burned under the name of azkara on the great altar with a certain part of the flour. The sacrifice of the 12 loaves of showbread was also combined with an incense offering, according to later sources. 2 golden bowls were placed upon the table of the showbread. When the stale loaves were taken away on the Sabbath to be replaced by new ones, the old incense was burned in the fire of the great altar of burnt offering. The incense offering was omitted only in 2 cases, with the sin offering of the poor and with the meat offering of the lepers. The independent incense offering, tamid, was brought twice every day, in the morning and in the evening, corresponding to the daily morning and evening sacrifices on the altar of burnt offering. The ordinance regarding the tamid prescribes that when the priest dresses the lamps in the morning, he shall burn incense, and also when he lights the lamps at even, ben ha'arbaim. This reference was considered obscure even in early times. The Samaritan and Karaite interpretation that it refers to the time from sunset to complete darkness, i.e., twilight, is most probably the correct one. An independent incense offering was prescribed also for the Day of Atonement. On this day, the high priest himself was required to burn the incense in the censer in the Holy of Holies, not, as usually, on the altar of incense. Importance of the sacrifice. The importance ascribed to the incense offering is evident from the special sanctity characterizing the sacrifice. It is the high prerogative of the priesthood to offer it. Uzziah is severely punished for presuming upon this prerogative, and the Levites who attempt to bring this offering without being entitled to do so suffer death. But the two priests entitled to perform the service, Aaron's sons, Nadab and Nabin, also perished when they committed an error in offering this most holy sacrifice by putting profane fire into their censers instead of fire from the altar of burnt offering. In the law itself, it is denounced as a sin deserving death if anyone takes of the holy incense for profane purposes or even makes incense according to the special receipt for holy incense. And similarly, if anyone uses for the offering incense other than that prescribed by law. Composition of the holy incense. The receipt for making the holy incense, given in Exodus 30, names 4 ingredients: na'af, stakte, probably storax gum, the rabbis taking it to be balsam, she'elet, onika, the fragrant operculum of a species of shell found in the Red Sea, and still used in the East for incense and medicine, albena galbanum, a species of gum, according to ancient authorities, the product of narthex, and according to the modern view, that of the ferula herb, labona, frankincense, the resin of the olibanum tree, i.e., one of the various species of Boswellia indigenous to Arabia Felix. The same quantity of each is to be taken and mixed with salt, made into a confection. In the later tradition, Maimonides, Yad, Kel Hamidash, on the Arabic words used by Maimonides, Aus dem Wörterbuch Tankum Jurus Chalmis, these 4 spices were not regarded as sufficient, and 7 others were added, namely myrrh, more, cassia, kea, the flower of nard, shibolet nerd, saffron, carcam, costus, kosh, guessing there, cinnamon, and cinnamon bark, kinasha. Oh, cinnamon bark smells good. Josephus speaks of 13 ingredients. This agrees with the fact that in other sources, Jordan amber, kifat ha-yarden, and a herb now unknown, which caused the smoke to rise, hence called ma'ale ashan, are mentioned. Salt is omitted in these lists, a very small quantity being added, 1/4 cab to the incense used for the whole year, but only the salt of Sodom, melasedomite, might be used. 368 minas of incense were prepared once a year in the temple, one for each day, and 3 extra for the sacrifice of the Day of Atonement. Some of the ingredients had to be specially prepared, as, for example, the anika, which was first soaked in cypress wine to take away the tartness. Great care was bestowed upon the comminuting of the ingredients, each of which was pounded by itself. And the man who performed that work incited himself by repeating the words, Hade hiib, make it very fine. The incense was pounded in the mortar twice a year, and required care otherwise. On damp days, it was piled up. On warm, dry days, it was spread out for drying. In Herodian times, the preparation of the incense was a kind of privilege retained in the family of Abtinas, which was thought to be in possession of special directions for making it. They were particularly credited with knowing how to cause the smoke of the incense offering to rise in the form of the stem of a date tree. When it reached the ceiling, it spread out and descended and covered the whole space. The smoke from incense, prepared by other apothecaries, spread irregularly as it rose. The family would not divulge the secret of its art, and was consequently driven from office. Apothecaries from Alexandria were sent for who were proficient in incense making, but they could not secure smoke, which rose regularly. The Abtinasses were therefore recalled, but they demanded double the pay they had previously received. They gave as a reason for their secrecy that, anticipating the destruction of the temple, they feared the secret might be used later in idolatrous services. The rabbis, however, severely criticized the Abtinasses for their selfishness. The Mishnah records their name as infamous. Rabbi Yohanan B. Nari tells of meeting an old man of the Abtinas family carrying a scroll containing a list of the ingredients used in the composition of the incense. The old man surrendered the scroll to our Yohanan, since the Abtinasses were no longer trustworthy. When our Akiba heard of this, he shed tears and said, "From now, we must never mention their name with blame." Ritual of the offering. Apparently, incense was generally offered in a pan, which the priest carried in his hand. In such a pan, Aharon carried the incense that he offered for the sins of the people. Each of Aharon's sons had his own pan, and the rebellious Levites also sacrificed incense on pans, which were subsequently used to cover the altar of burnt offering of the tabernacle. It would thus appear that every priest had his censer. In the Jewish statutory sacrificial ritual, on the introduction of a special incense altar, this custom was set aside, surviving only in the ritual of the Day of Atonement. On that day, the priest entered the Holy of Holies, carrying in his right hand the pan for the incense, filled with live coals, and in his left hand a spoon-like vessel called calf, containing the incense. After placing both of these utensils on the floor, the high priest took the incense from the calf with the hollow of his hand, not with his fingers, and heaped it upon the pan containing the coals. It was considered especially difficult to take the incense up, thus without spilling any. In later times, a special altar for the incense offering was introduced, and this, more than anything else, shows the great importance that was ascribed to the offering. The assumption that the incense altar mentioned in the law is of later origin is supported by the passages quoted above, where it is expressly said that the holy sacrifice of incense was not burned on a special altar, but in the censers of the priests. It must, moreover, be noted that this altar is not mentioned in the account of the building and arrangement of the tabernacle, being referred to only in Exodus 30. Reference to it was similarly added later in the account of the building of the temple. Otherwise, these points of criticism need not be discussed here. According to the description of 1 Kings 6, the altar in the temple consisted of a table of cedar wood overlaid with gold. It stood in the sanctuary near the entrance to the Holy of Holies. The fact that in the epistle to the Hebrews, this altar was included in the Holy of Holies shows how sacred it was considered to be. In the course of time, the ritual became increasingly complicated. According to the Talmud, the ceremony was as follows. After completing the preparations for the morning's burnt offering, such as the cleaning of the altar, 2 priests removed the ashes from the altar of burnt offering and the lamps. Then the sacrificial animals were killed. Lots were drawn to decide which priest should offer the incense, and then followed the preparations for the sacrifice. A priest took live coals from the altar of burnt offering in a silver brazier and placed them on the incense altar. The officiating priest then entered the sanctuary carrying the incense in a jar, bazak, which he held over a shallow spoon-shaped utensil, kaf, to prevent any grains from dropping on the floor from the heaped jar. And when the command, burn the incense, issued from the chamber of the priests, he spread upon the coals the incense in the jar. An assisting priest held the spoon. He was also to pour into the hollow hand of the officiant any grains that might drop into the spoon. Both priests then left the sanctuary. It is expressly stated that none of the other priests was to be present, and that no other person might be in the sanctuary. After the incense had been consumed, the pieces of the tamid were placed on the altar of burnt offering. I'm just going to get it. Water. Significance of the incense offering. The importance of the incense offering is evident from what has been said above regarding its origin. Whatever was pleasing to men was offered to the deity also. And as men were honored with incense, to the deity was paid similar honor. This explanation is entirely sufficient. It was natural that the rising smoke should be regarded as the symbol or vehicle of prayer, thus perhaps may be interpreted. But all other symbolical interpretations are far-fetched and not supported by the ancient sources, as, for example, the opinion of Josephus, that the 13 ingredients which come from the sea, the desert, and the fertile country are meant to signify that all things are God's and are intended for his service, or the view of Philo, that the 4 ingredients mentioned in the law symbolize the 4 elements water, earth, fire, and air, which combined represent the universe. Maimonides regards the incense offering as designed originally to counteract the odors arising from the slaughtered animals and to animate the spirit of the priests. The incense was also considered as an antidote against the plague. The reciting of the incense chapter after Psalm 114 prevents death from entering the house. This passage of the Talmud is now incorporated in some prayer books. I think that's the end. No, there's more. Oops, okay. Getting there. I think another 10 minutes. The Peace Offering by John W. Reidenbach, June 2003. Of all the offerings, the sin and trespass offerings are the best known and understood because of their clear association with Christ's crucifixion for the sins of the world. At the other end of the spectrum, the peace offering is the least understood because its symbolism, while easy to grasp, is perhaps the most difficult to experience in actual practice. It is introduced in Leviticus 3, 1-5. You could read that in your own time. Biblical commentators have given this offering a variety of titles. Peace, fellowship, praise, and thanksgiving are the most common. However, the Kale Delich commentary states that the most correct is saving offering. Saving offering. Each title shows a somewhat different aspect of the teaching contained in it. Verse 5 informs us that this too is a sweet savor offering, indicating that no sin is involved in it, and thus it is most satisfying to God. The word satisfying is important to understanding this offering. Verse 5 also shows us an aspect of the ritual that teaches us about this offering's purpose. It is burnt upon, that is, on top of the burnt sacrifice, which in turn had the meal offering on top of it. They were not necessarily layered like a sandwich and then all burned at the same time. However, the daily burnt offering was always made first, and it was followed by the meal offering and the peace offering on the same fire. The peace offering then had to be offered after the other two were already burning. How long after is lost to history, but it could not have been a long time if the same fire was used. Peaceful communion. Leviticus 7, verses 11-18 and 29-32 provide more information regarding the specific distribution of the various parts of this animal sacrifice. We need to understand the order followed here. The offerer brought his offering to the altar, laid his hand on it, and slew it, killed it. The priest sprinkled the blood upon the altar and around it. The animal was then cut up, and God's portion, almost entirely fat, besides the 2 kidneys, was placed on top of the already burnt and meal offerings. Then the priest received the breast and right shoulder for himself and his children, and the offerer received the remainder of the animal to eat. However, it had to be eaten within 1 day if it was a thank offering, or within 2 days if it was a vow or voluntary offering. If any remained on the 3rd day, it had to be burned. In this process, the major teaching of the peace offering is revealed. It's gonna back up a bit, just make sure. Who wrote this again? Oh, John Reidenbach. Okay, that's from Church of God. Recall that the burning on the altar of the sweet savor offerings pictures God consuming a meal and being satisfied. Likewise, the priest receiving his portion shows him being satisfied, and the offerer with his portion is also satisfied. Filled, gratified, contented, accepted, convinced, supplied, persuaded, pleased, and assured all capture the intent of the symbolism. In addition, since all parties, God, priest, and man, share the same meal and satisfaction, it shows all in peaceful communion, or fellowship. Because it was placed in sequence on top of the other two offerings, the peace offering is directly connected to them, and thus it depicts the effect of perfect devotion to God and man, peaceful satisfaction and fellowship, the fruit of devotedly keeping the two great commandments of the law. In the sacrifice, Christ symbolically plays all three parts. He is the offering, sacrificing his life in service. He is the priest, serving mankind at the altar as mediator. And he is the offerer, bringing his sacrifice, which is his life, to the altar, or his blood. The altar, the place of meeting for all three, represents sacrificial services and devotion to God that give him satisfaction and result in our acceptance. The peace offering shows man as Christ accepted, fed, strengthened, and satisfied by sacrifice, teaching that sacrifice is indeed the essence, the heart and core, the essential element of love, whether to God or man. More specifically, it shows us that sacrifice plays a major role in acceptance before God, spiritual feeding, and therefore spiritual strength and spiritual satisfaction. Devoted people sacrifice for those they love. Thus, sacrifice indicates devotion to God, burnt offering, and devotion and service to man, meal offering. Yeah, actually, I talk to people, usually women, and they'd ask me, "What's love?" Love, I feel that it's emotions, and I'm telling them, no, love isn't an emotion, or it's not just an emotion. It's love is action. Love is sacrifice. Love is giving. I can't just say I love you and not do anything for you. Those are just words. Love, real love, according to scriptures, giving is sacrifice, is action. It is selflessness. It is First Corinthians, I think it's 13, the love chapter. It's God is love. Elohim is love. His Torah is love. His expression of his love to us. If we live by the Torah, we live a loving life, right? Okay, where am I now? I got lost. Devoted people. Okay, I have one point to share with you. Now that you know the third curse is pestilence, some of you are saying, yeah, but we're now in the fourth sabbatical cycle. And you're right. Now go and read the fourth curse. Uh-oh, I'm scared. Here's a third curse, which goes with the third sabbatical cycle. That's the plagues, right? Wild beasts. We can see this now, and we saw it with the swine flu back in 2009. But this time, this one is different. Understand we are now approaching the middle of the 70th Jubilee cycle spoken of in Daniel 9. We have explained this in our book, The 2300 Days of Hell, and we are in the 120th Jubilee cycle at the same time, which is the last one before the 7th millennium. We're in the 70th Jubilee cycle. Oh yeah, wow. That's true. I don't really think about that too much. We have shown you how the Messiah was killed on the fourth day of the week, and we have also shown you how the temple was both built and destroyed in the fourth millennium. And we are now in the fourth sabbatical cycle of this Jubilee cycle. And I just want to add, the number 4 in Chinese superstition means death. I don't know where they got that from, but that's what they believe. Number 4 means death. Like, look it up. Pretty sure that is true. 4 in Chinese superstition. There. The number 4 4 is well known to be an unlucky number because Si, which means death in Chinese. People will go to extremes based on superstitions of the number 4. Si and say. So yeah, that's the Chinese. They don't like 4. So here we go. With that preamble. No, wait. Where am I? We're now on the 4th. Okay, with that preamble, now read the 4th curse of Leviticus 26. You will not be reformed. Bring a sword on you. This is the curse of war. And it's funny because I just did a video yesterday on my channel saying that China, oh man, that China might declare war on America. And I don't know why. Actually, I kind of do. Because they're blaming America for this virus. They're saying, America did it to us. And even though that's a false flag, they might attack them because China has nothing left to do. Their economy is down. They're a destroyed nation who has nothing to lose. And they have everything to gain. Or not really to gain, but at this point, they're so desperate, they might as well just attack America. It's just something that came into my mind. You know, it's not factual. That's just speculation on my part. But again, this is the curse of war. Okay, continuing on. And we have repeatedly told you that the Daniel 8 war between the king of the north and the king of the south was to take place in the middle of this 4th sabbatical cycle. The US almost went to war with Iran, but it is prophesied that the EU would war with Iran and defeat her. Whoa. Okay, well, all right. Yeah. The same prophecy in Daniel 8 also tells us it is the start of the 2300 days of persecution upon the saints. Okay, where is this? Daniel 8. Okay, anyway. Right, I should read that. I want to read that. Since I've got a new Bible, Septuagint, I want to see what Daniel 8 says. Does it say that? What if it doesn't say that in mine? Then we cancel it, right? We cancel the apocalypse. Daniel 8, where it says, when you're gathered inside your cities. Okay, let's look for that. Okay, I don't see that in my Bible. When you're gathered in your cities, I'll send the plague among you. Maybe it's not Daniel 8. I just can't find it. Anyway. It is also during this 4th sabbatical cycle, that a plague is going to come and take away many. We will then fall into the hands of our enemies. We will be defeated. This curse goes, that's not very encouraging. We will be defeated. This curse goes with the curse of war in this 4th sabbatical cycle. Maybe that is Leviticus 26, not Daniel. I just need to find that scriptures. There's no reference. It's just a scripture without a reference. I need to find it. When you're gathered in your cities. I'm going to Google that. Let me just... When you're gathered inside your cities? Okay, let's look at that. When you are gathered inside your cities, plague among you. Leviticus 26:25. Okay. So that's where it's from. It wasn't quoted. And I will bring upon you a sword, avenging the cause of my covenant. And you shall flee for refuge to your cities, and I will send out death against you. So the plague, death, and you shall be delivered into the hands of your enemies. Okay, there it is. Now you have it. All three in this fourth sabbatical cycle. Leviticus 26:26. War, plagues, and famine. Oh, definitely. Plagues and famine is just the war part that is still yet to come. And I've been speculating that because so many countries are going to be weakened as a result of this plague, it's only common sense that there's going to be at least one opportunistic country with an evil leader or dictator saying, let's attack this nation now because they're weak. They're ready. They're ripe to be conquered and taken over. I could see Iran doing that. I could see China doing that. I could see Russia doing that. I could see North Korea. Any one of those four will be, watch those four. I think one of those four are going to do it. They're going to be the first to pull the trigger and say, let's take over such and such country because they're weak now. And if we don't do it now, they'll regain their strength. They're in a moment of instability, of uncertainty, and everyone's indoors. It's just, they're open to attack. So let's do it now while we still can. Otherwise, we won't get this opportunity ever again. So that's where I see this, what Joseph is saying. War is the last piece of the puzzle for this fourth sabbatical cycle. And this will carry over into the fifth and final curse. But I want you to understand what you're told in Isaiah. Isaiah 17. Let's read that because they repeat it a few times. Isaiah 17, verse 4. The word against Damascus. Is that right? 17:4. And she shall no longer be a strong place for Ephraim to flee to. And behold, and there shall no longer be kingdom in Damascus, or remnant of Syrians. There shall be in that day a failure of the glory of Yaakov, and the riches of his glory shall be shaken. Okay, so mine reads it differently. The fatness of his flesh will become lean. In mine it says, the riches of his glory shall be shaken. So we understand Yaakov to be America and the Israelite nations, such as the UK and so on and so forth. So his riches, his blessings, his power, his economic strength will be shaken, will be, rug off, pulled from under him, so to speak. So that's the way I understand it from Septuagint. Here it says the fatness of his flesh. That's more implying famine. This is more implying economic strength taken. Okay. I'm going to continue reading the rest of the... No, wait. Hosea 5:12. Okay, let's read Hosea 5:12 as well. I think it's 1080 or somewhere in that area, if I remember correctly. Let's read that. Hosea 5:12. Therefore I will be as a consternation to Ephraim, and as a goad to the house of Judah. And Ephraim saw his disease, and Judah his pain. No, that doesn't seem. That's not it. Is that it? No, that's not the correct. 5:12. Oh, I'm in the wrong. Or am I? No. I guess that's the wrong reference there. I guess it is 17:4. Isaiah 17:4. I'm in the wrong chapter, wrong verse. Okay, I'll just keep reading what it says here. And it shall be as if one should gather standing corn and reap the grain of the ears. And when I say corn, I mean barley. It shall be as if one should gather standing barley and reap the grain of the ears. And it shall be as if one should gather ears in a rich valley, and as if there should be left stubble therein, or as it were the berries of an olive tree, 2 or 3 on the topmost bough, or as if 4 or 5 should be left on their branches. Thus says Jehovah, the Elohim of Israel. Okay, no, that's completely wrong. Oh, alarm again. It's probably the last alarm. All right, let's see. Isaiah 17, verse 1. No, that's not really talking about it either. Oh, it does. Okay. Behold, Damascus shall be taken away from among cities and shall become a ruin. Abandoned forever, to be a fold and resting place for flocks, and there shall be none to go after them. And she shall no longer be a strong place for Ephraim to flee, and there shall no longer be a kingdom in Damascus or a remnant of Syrians, for you are no better than the children of Israel, even than their glory, thus says Jehovah of hosts. There shall be in that day, Okay, so John Gill has this to say. So John Gill's interpretation of that verse, like I said in the Septuagint, it says that their wealth will be shaken, and he interprets the fatness of his flesh will wax lean, meaning all their wealth and riches should be taken away. So that's what the Septuagint says. And that's it. That's the end. Okay. There's one comment. I read that already. I went through it before I streamed. It's just an update from Iowa. Germany taking advantage of the situation. What are they doing? They're doing everything to prevent COVID-19 from affecting the economy. As much as cannot change mortality rate. No, the 3.4% mortality rate is way too low. It's 15% to or 20, as high as 50%. It's just because the numbers of infected lag with the death number. There's a period of 30 to 40 days before the virus will go into the end stage, late stage of illness, where more severe symptoms will be manifested. But yeah, I find it interesting that Joseph is, what's the word? He's presenting that the Middle Eastern nations would attack Europe, and there are telltale signs that can be observed when you look at Europe, especially Germany, France, Sweden, a lot of places where there are many uh, people of Middle Eastern origin. They tend to live in clusters, in groups, where they cluster together and they create their own communities, and they are infamous as being no-go zones. So you can see how the culture in which they immigrate to, they do not mix or integrate very well. They do not assimilate into that culture. Not just assimilate as in, I don't mean in the way like the Native Americans were assimilated and their culture was erased. I mean, they don't even live peaceably. They don't even live in harmony with other people. They're out there with their grooming groups and raping and committing crimes to the point that the police are afraid to go to their no-go zones. Not even the police will go there. That's how afraid they are of that community. The populace, the native populace, native French people and Swedish and all that, they're afraid to even speak out against this, all the atrocities being committed, because if they were to do so, they would be silenced. They would be fired. They would be ostracized. So you can see this iron and clay will just not mix. So yeah, I see that very likely happening, that a Middle Eastern country or a European country, they will come into a conflict of arms on a scale that is leading to a large-scale war. And yeah, that's very likely. So as much as people want to dismiss it, that it could be the reality very, very soon, especially once the aftermath of this plague, once this plague blows over and runs its course, and then all we have is, a world that has been ravaged and starved and demoralized and no longer trusting of their governments and the CDC and the WHO, and trust has been betrayed. So, okay, that's the end of the newsletter. Yeah, well, it is the seventh day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, so we should rejoice, we should praise Jehovah, and rejoice and be happy. Although there's a lot of bad news, that bad news must be so, because it leads to the happy ending that we're all waiting for, which is outlined in the book of Revelation, where there is a new heaven, a new earth, a world that is deserving of the saints, of the individuals who are called by the Father to live a holy life, to have His Spirit living in them and through them, being lights of the world, not of the world, just in the world. A time where there is no more plague, no more famine, no more war, no more crying, no more dying. Even Elohim himself, he's going to wipe every tear from our eyes. He's going to feed us with the fruit, maybe even the fruit from the tree of life. It's going to bring healing to all the nations. And the knowledge of his Torah, of his ways, will be like the water covering the earth. Everyone will know. There won't be any questions whether he exists, or whether it's this calendar, or whether we have to look for this barley. It's going to be explicit. He's going to set us all straight and tell us it has been this way. But you were blinded. I blinded them. And I only showed a select few. And they kept it faithfully. Even though people made it harder for them, and they ostracized them, and they criticized them, and they were unkind to them. But nevertheless, he persisted and did what was right in my sight. You know, kind of like Job and his 3 friends. They spoke incorrectly. But we're not to bring other people down. We just mind our business, and we do what we are expected to do according to the understanding that Yah has given to us. And so that's our responsibility. And that it is sin if we go against that. It is sin if we break his Torah and the spiritual Torah. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm just going to end the stream now. It's been a fun time. I think it's like 3 hours long now. Yeah, 3 hours and 5 minutes. It's a long stream. Okay, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Hope to go to bed by 2, and then